All right, we are almost at the end of our fiscal year. Tomorrow is the last day, and if you would like to partner with us, first I want to say thank you to all of those who have called in or who have gone online and made a contribution to the Family Research Council. You know, this program, which is now on about 800 stations across the country and a couple other platforms like his channel, Liftable TV, and others. It's because you stand with us. We don't receive any government money. It's all because of folks like you who care about this country, want to know the truth, and want a voice in our nation's capital. So if you would like to join with us, we have members of our team standing by to take your call, 800-225-4008. That's 800-225-4008, or you can go to tonyperkins.com. Now, this story that I'm about to share with you is it's an incident in Tacoma, Washington, but it's not isolated. This kind of stuff pops up all over, and I know this to be true. I don't doubt it, because I was just thinking about back when I was a television reporter a number of years ago before I got into politics. And I remember one time going to this meeting that was regarding school-based clinics. Now, I was just a reporter, so I guess they assumed I was on their side because I was a reporter. Well, I got in, Planned Parenthood was talking about how they skirt the law. And this was in Louisiana, which is, arguably it's a conservative state, especially when it comes to abortion and all of those things. Now, remember, this was back in the 90s. This is a long time ago. And they were talking about how they know how to get around the law to make sure kids get condoms and get contraception and are counseled for abortion when it was against the law. Again, that was in the 90s. Well, a teacher in Tacoma, Washington, it was at Stewart Middle School. Now, this just percolated up. This happened a few weeks back. As a part of the science class, gave out a flyer. Now, part of this flyer was promoting Plan B, emergency contraception. It was telling these 8th graders how they could buy this Plan B at a local pharmacy without a prescription, regardless of their age. It told them how they could buy condoms at any age. And it also told them how they could get abortions without asking for their parents' consent. These are 8th graders, okay? This was a part of the science class. This was a flyer that was developed by Planned Parenthood. Now, the school is apologizing. In fact, Assistant Director of Secondary Education for the district, Eric Hogan, in a letter to a concerned parent, and I think this was shared with the media there, but I don't know that it was district-wide, apologized for the distribution of a flyer and said it was a mistake. He said, previously Planned Parenthood taught within our schools and supplied the flyer that was distributed to the students. Apparently, he says a new teacher came in, it was there in the materials, hadn't been authorized, but the teacher passed it out, not realizing the flyer wasn't approved material, and the teacher gave it out. Well, I got a couple of questions there. Number one, why in the world was it ever authorized for Planned Parenthood to be in there pushing this type of stuff? And then secondly, think about this for a moment. A teacher who is teaching 8th graders that doesn't have more common sense than to put this out into the hands of students. I mean, what kind of moral compass do they have? Now, this is one of the things we hear all the time when we bring these issues up. Well, there's so many kids whose parents are not involved in their lives. Either they're in single parent homes, and so they have to have somebody to turn to, and that's why we need to educate them about contraception. We need to educate them about abortion. All of these things is what they say. Okay, that's what they say. But then why would they specifically talk to kids and help them circumvent their parents, which is what this flyer did? Yeah, I would expect to hear crickets because they were caught red-handed. This is what they do. This is what is happening in our education system. Government schools, the curriculum is seeking to drive a wedge between parent and child. That way, parents, they don't know what they're talking about. Those old fuddy-duddies, I'm sure that's an old term too. They don't know what they're talking about. We can help you. And so they're undermining the authority and the credibility of parents. Again, I'm going to say this, parents. If you have kids in government schools, you need to pray very hard about how you get them out. Now, I know some say, well, but we live in a good school district. I know where I live, it's a good school district. It's a good conservative area. But this curriculum is finding its way in. The left is infiltrating every aspect of education. And this whole LGBTQ agenda is popping up everywhere. It's not just in health class anymore. It's everywhere. You can't escape it. And parents, I'll say again, God gave us the authority and the responsibility to educate and train our children. Talks about this in Deuteronomy. Now, we can delegate the authority, but we cannot delegate the responsibility. You and I will be held accountable by God for how we trained up our children. Now, that said, we still have, I think, an obligation, a responsibility to influence the schools because that's the pipeline for what's going out all across America. And we cannot abandon the public schools. Doesn't mean we got to send our kids there. But we certainly should be there as teachers, as Christian teachers, as light in the darkness, as school board members. And that's exactly what we were doing today. Earlier today, FRC Action hosted a school board boot camp. And here to talk about some of the highlights and next steps is Meg Kilgannon. She is the Senior Fellow for Education Studies here at the Family Research Council. And I'm sure she's just now catching her breath after a marathon session today at the boot camp. Meg, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you, Tony. We're still training here, getting people ready to go, training up the next
over
generation.
Over 1,000 people registered for the boot camp today. And I want to go back just for that story I just shared out of Tacoma, Washington. You know, I would like to say that's an isolated incident, but it's not. That is, I think, systematic. I mean, that is happening throughout education in America today.
It is, and a lot of that can actually be addressed by tightening up the school board governance. When you only have one side of thinking, whether it's, right or left, if you only have one side of the debate represented in a governing institution, then things are going to be skewed one way. And maybe things will get a little loose and not be run exactly right. And this is how things like flyers for 8th grade students get outsourced to groups like Planned Parenthood.
So Meg, give our viewers and our listeners some highlights from today's school board boot camp. I helped open it up, and then I actually watched the vast majority of it. I found it very, very informative.
I'm so glad to hear that. We had great feedback in the Q&A from the folks who are watching. We had great questions, great engagement. We started off with a panel of school board members, one who is serving in North Carolina and 2 former school board members, and they spoke about what it is like to be on a school board, and they told it like it is. They said it's a lot of work, but that it is very much worth doing. And they talked about what they'd done well, what maybe hadn't gone so well. They talked about really making sure that you're managing your superintendent and not the other way around. Because a lot of times superintendents think that they're in charge of the school system, and they are in charge of running the school system at the direction of the school board, not just running it however they'd like to run it. So that's a way that is a very practical way for school board members to exercise their authority. There's a lot you can do about budgeting. There's a lot you can do about the decision whether to open schools or not that we faced in the fall. We had a school board member who faced that decision, and they decided to open, and it went well. thanks be to God. But that she said that they did that in response to the feedback they got from their parents, that 82% of parents wanted the schools open. And so the school board listened. And I know that many, many parents in my county wanted the schools open, and they were not open. So thank goodness for
There was
good
a lot
school
of
board
practical advice in terms of, as you just pointed out, what it's like to serve on the school board. But then we had a really good discussion of the issues, the critical race theory. How is it popping up? Because it doesn't always. Now, it does some cases. It comes with neon lights on some occasions, but other places it's very subtle in the way it works its way into the curriculum. That was discussed, and I thought it was a very practical discussion on how to run a campaign, what's needed to win. I thought that was very, very good and helpful. But stepping back for just a moment, Meg, I mean, we're at a critical point. I believe that we're seeing parents, as we've talked about before, with a realization that they can no longer deny. They maybe thought it was happening. They saw the attitude of their kids. They saw what their kids were looking at. But the silver lining to the coronavirus and the school shutdowns is parents were exposed, and they can no longer deny it. And so many of them are taking action, wanting to find out what to do. But I think, Meg, this is bigger than just the school boards. I think this is, in many ways, this is taking back the country, because if you look at what's happened through public education over the last, I mean, you could go back to the 60s and 70s, but really it's been accelerated beginning in the Obama years, and now it is just moving so rapidly with light speed. If we don't take this moment, this could be that point we look back and say, you know what? That was where we totally lost the country, or it's where we turned America around.
Right. Well, if you think about that little 5-year-old child who's starting kindergarten this year and the kind of school system that child enters, and you think about what the school system could be like when that child graduates from high school 12 years later, we can make a tremendous impact. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take a lot of hard work. It's going to take a lot of unpleasant confrontations with issues that we would all rather just not talk about. But we are going to have to talk about them. We're going to have honest conversations about them. We're going to have to confront them and come to some kind of an agreement with the people that we disagree with, or we're going to have to replace them on the school boards and run things ourselves. And I'll tell you, today we heard from a lot of people who are ready to run for school board and run things ourselves. And it was really great to hear.
Yeah, Meg, you know what I think we need? I think we need an army of mama bears. Those mamas who are going to protect their cubs, protect their children. That's what I've often called my wife a mama bear, because she'll protect and has protected our kids. And I think that's what it's going to take. I think it's going to take moms and dads too, but moms really lead the charge. And I'm hopeful and prayerful that we'll see more mothers either enter the arena themselves or push their husbands into the arena to take this stand for their children. Because it just reminded me when you said these 5-year-olds, George Barna, we've talked about on the program many times, talks about worldview, when a worldview is shaped from 13 months to 13 years, and those formative years. And we see what they're trying to do, even in this administration, trying to get their tentacles into the children even earlier.
Sure, with pre-K, right? No, that's so true. I mean, we talked today about, we had a lot of questions in the chat about what kind of credentials do you need to run for school board? And I love what you said about the mama bears. We don't need to focus on credentials. That's where the left really has us over a barrel, because they run all the credentialing systems there are, okay? We need to talk about skills. What are the skills that you bring to the table? And you have skills, especially moms. Our main skill is doing jobs nobody else wants to do. So that's perfect for running for school board right there. But maybe you've run a small business. Maybe you know how to do budgeting. Maybe you're a contractor and you're familiar with how buildings should be run, how buildings should be built, and the systems inside them should run. Maybe you run a trucking company. Maybe you've been in the military and you're familiar with a large organization. Maybe you're an accountant and you know how to look at budgets. You know how to run an audit. You know, there are so many things that people know about that inform the governance of school boards that make a contribution that do not require a credential. It's a matter of having a skill and a desire and some common sense, Tony, knowing what is right and wrong.
So true. Meg, we're out of time. We have to leave it there. But quickly, next steps. Where can people find out more about next steps?
You can go to frcaction.org and check out our resources there. We have lots of education resources on the frc.org website. And you can email us at schools@frcaction.org, and we'll answer any questions you have.
All right, Meg Kilgannon, great job today. Thanks so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Tony.